Hello, everybody, and welcome to At America TV. My name is James, one of the e-guides here at America, and we welcome audience members joining us online. In this episode, we will be having Fireside Chat with Rebeca Hwang, creating impactful business. A little bit about At America. At America is the United States Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn more about the United States. Now, before we begin, we have several opening remarks. Up first, we've got Pak Lester Asamoah, an econ officer from the U.S. Embassy, Jakarta. Pak Lester, the stage is yours.
Selamat malam semua. My name is Lester Asamoah, and I'm an economic officer at the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta. I would like to thank our speaker, Dr. Rebeca Hwang, for being willing to share her extensive expertise, and Ibu Ayuhita Tiara Silalahi for moderating this evening. I also want to thank everyone joining us this evening. We are glad that you're here. As the COVID-19 pandemic has unfolded, we must now look ahead to the serious work of rebuilding our communities and our economies for a better, more sustainable, and equitable post-pandemic world. People in Indonesia share a very similar entrepreneurial spirit to people in the United States. A World Economic Forum survey of ASEAN countries showed that 35% of Indonesians aspire to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship and innovation have been crucial to both the Indonesian and US economies, and it is important to the Biden administration that we collectively reduce barriers to starting and scaling companies around the world. As we work to reduce barriers to entrepreneurship, the Biden administration has also focused on reducing barriers for women seeking greater economic opportunities. The White House launched the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative in February 2019 with the goal of economically empowering 50 million women by 2025. The three pillars of the initiative are women prospering in the workforce, women succeeding as entrepreneurs, and women enabled in the economy. Indonesia was the first country to have an event supported by the Providing Opportunities for Women's Economic Rise, or the POWER Initiative, which is connected to the broader White House initiative. This, and a robust engagement in entrepreneurship, demonstrates both Indonesia's great entrepreneurial potential, as well as a commitment of the United States to support young Indonesians in unlocking that potential. I look forward to learning from Dr. Hwang, and I'm grateful for the chance to address you all today. I'm sure many of you will be starting your own successful businesses or become leaders in startups that ensure sustainable and equitable economic growth. Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you so much, Pak Lester, for your remarks. And now I would like to invite Bu Dia Wihardini, the Director for Business Global, to give her opening remarks. Bu Dia, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So our distinguished speaker, Dr. Rebeca Hwang, Lester Asamoah, the Econ Officer from the U.S. Embassy in Indonesia, my colleague, Ayuhita Tiara, as the moderator in this talk show, and beloved participants gathering here, professionals, entrepreneurs, academics, alumni, and students. Good evening and also good morning to Rebeca. Before we get started, on behalf of BINUS University, I would like to thank At America and Global Entrepreneurship Network Indonesia for offering the opportunity to organize two sessions. So one tonight and also the other one is on Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. We are happy to be able to work with the teams of At America and GAN Indonesia because these collaborations may hopefully enrich entrepreneurial skills of the audience. This is one of the core courses at BINUS, and I believe also at many other universities in Indonesia. More and more people of any educational backgrounds and levels have started to learn that becoming an entrepreneur is a highly dynamic, viable, and rewarding endeavor, which contributes not only to the empowerment of the local economy, but also the global community. Inspired by the success of young entrepreneurs who can turn their startup companies into $1 billion enterprises in a relatively short time, Indonesia is now experiencing in a booming of entrepreneurial spirits. I can say that this is a very good situation in Indonesia, where many people, especially the youth, aspire to own a startup and become successful in developing it into a unicorn company. To help achieving this objective, however, their passions needs to be nurtured and their skills need to be upgraded. And therefore, it is through sessions like this that we try to improve learning communities with knowledge and skills needed to be future entrepreneurs. In accordance with BINU's vision in fostering and empowering the society, in building and serving the nation, I hope that this could be an inspiring session for everyone joining now to help your business, research, or even study or to grow. This is also a good chance for the alumni of the US universities to gather. IU and I, for example, are a part of US university alumni and very much involved in alumnas or Ikatan Alumni Amerika Serikat. We are proud to be here with other fellow alumni and other guests to work together in advancing the nation. So a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Please make use of this chance optimally to get new insights and learn from the experts. I do hope you can all enjoy this talk show. So stay healthy, stay happy, and stay safe. Thank you.
Video for all of you to watch. Check it out.
Welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021, with 200 nations hosting national campaigns to inspire more of their citizens to consider the path of entrepreneurship. We'll hear from celebrity entrepreneurs like Sir Richard Branson, inspiring more young people to follow in their footsteps. And we'll hear from corporations like FedEx, who are helping to make it possible for some of those left behind communities to participate in this great entrepreneurial renaissance. And whether or not it's cities like Kansas City hosting hundreds of events, or whether it's individuals reaching out across national boundaries on Zoom to collaborate, we're going to see a lot of work underway in trying to tackle and experiment with addressing the big challenges of the world. And while we have big challenges, GW this year is aligned with COP26, the climate change conference, but naturally beyond big issues like that, the world also faces recovering from this pandemic. We hope to reboot, rethink, and regenerate our economies as a result of taking a global approach to how we can build back our societies in a better way, make them more inclusive, more equitable, and indeed ones that leverage the power of their entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs is what this week's campaign is going to be all about. They're the ones we're going to be shedding the spotlight on. We are going to be releasing the information about the top 25 entrepreneurs in the world emerging from our Entrepreneurship World Cup competition. Very, very exciting. We had 200 countries participate and 100,000 entrants, so look out for that. You know, entrepreneurs are perfectly made for this era. They're comfortable with uncertainty. They're comfortable with the lack of predictability. They don't mind. In fact, they thrive when someone sets the reset button and someone shakes up and changes all the rules, because it means all of a sudden there's lots more experimenting to be done, teams to be formed, solutions to be tested, and opportunities to be explored. So we hope you'll be part of Global Entrepreneurship Week. Go to gew.co, find an activity in your community. If you can't find what you're looking for, join us on social media at hashtag GEW2021. Thank you and happy Global Entrepreneurship Week.
right, and now without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator for today, Bu Ayupita Tiara Silalahi, the Deputy Head of International Business Program from BINUS Business School. Bu Ayupita, the stage is yours.
Thank you, James. Hello and good evening to everyone, and good morning to Rebecca. Such an honor to be here, and I'd like to invite our speaker, Dr. Rebeca Hwang, co-founder of Calais Ventures, co-founder of Rivet Ventures, and a PhD in social network theory from Stanford University. Good morning, Dr. Rebecca.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, it's a pleasure. How are you this morning?
It's great. It's 5:15 a.m. here in San Francisco, so you give me a good excuse to get my day started, to be productive. I have a lot of things to do today, so this is great.
Oh, that's great. You have your coffee ready and ready to share your experiment with us?
I have a large coffee with me. Yes, very excited to be here.
That's great. Well, without further ado, I'd like to, share the floor with you. So the stage is yours.
Fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone here in California, and good evening to all of you in Indonesia. I have known Ivan, who's here with GW for probably over a decade. So it's such a pleasure to be here with friends, and it's like coming back home to family. We just launched the Global Entrepreneurship Week here in the US from the headquarters of Thunderbird School of Management in Phoenix. So I've been having my GW fun and buzz for a few days now, and it's really nice to see that all of the activities that make GW so exciting every year, now are all underway. When we talked about doing this chat, we discussed the possibility of addressing some issues around diversity, especially relating to gender in technology, in the business world, in entrepreneurship and investing. And I wanted to share a few stats with you to get the conversation kicked off, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you, just to have a dialogue on some of the concerns and interests of the crowd here, of the audience. And I hope to get a lot of questions as well from the students who so kindly made time today to join us. One thing that is really important to know in terms of gender and entrepreneurship is that women are becoming the dominant force, the drivers of consumption, of usage, as well as the control of money in the world. About 80% of all consumption is decided by female consumers. So in some ways, if you think about the profile of the typical consumer, this consumer is female. Women also are expected in the next 5 to 10 years to control the flow of money in private capital. About 2/3 of the world private money, private wealth, is going to go through the hands of women. This represents, according to some studies, about $30 trillion that will be allocated, invested with criteria developed by female investors. And in terms of the female consumption, female consumers represent almost $3 trillion in annual decisions that they make in purchasing. So this represents a market as big as India and China combined. And what is really outstanding or shocking, given the stats, is that if you look at 2020, only 2.3% of the venture capital funding went to female founders. So we have this disparity of an enormous influence of decisions that women make in the market. And yet we see very little decision-making power on what type of services and products are funded and created in places like Silicon Valley, where we have the development of many of our new startups and technologies. So as an investor myself, I see this not just as a problem, but also as a great opportunity for many of the entrepreneurs today who get this gap and understand that if these underserved consumers are provided with amazing solutions and products, then there's a lot of money, there's a lot of growth as a startup to be achieved and realized. So it's in some ways a very exciting time that we are aware of this opportunity, and that many of us can put our heads together to create companies that will be much more diverse from the perspective of the teams that are behind those companies, and also from the perspective of the products and the services that are going to be much better catered to the needs of female consumers who represent such a big decision-making power. I will just say a couple more things about the power of diversity. Diversity in teams has been linked to increasing creativity, in increasing retention of your employees, in engagement of your team members, which translates, of course, in increase of revenue and profits. But also it's been linked to our ability to better predict and accurately predict new market opportunities and to solve complex problems. So when we talk about the inclusion of many different perspectives and minorities into our teams in our startups, it's not just about social justice that we're referring to. We're really talking about how to be better performers when it comes to problem solving, creating new ideas and innovation, creating new companies. Diversity is good for business. And with that, I would like to pass it on to my moderator to see if there are any questions that you'd like to discuss.
Thank you, Rebecca. Like maybe, I don't know if maybe if you heard this proverbs, these African proverbs, when they say, if you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Do you think focusing on women empowerment, women founders, startups will bring such a drastic change to a nation, to any nation?
Well, if you reverse engineer that problem by first addressing what is the power of entrepreneurship, we know that small businesses are the engine that drive the creation of new employment in most countries. In many regions, the entrepreneurship, not just tech entrepreneurship from high technology based, high growth startups that are backed by venture capitalists, but small family based enterprises, small businesses, medium sized businesses are really the drivers of many economies. Sometimes 80% of the local employment and the channels, the distribution channels, the control of the economy is held by these entrepreneurs. And so given that, if you can increase the performance of these companies by increasing the diverse perspectives represented in those teams, then you have tremendous power in influencing local economies and global GDP, to be honest. Now, I want to be careful and not just focusing on, we have to educate only female entrepreneurs. The key is in creating diversity and inclusion, in having all of the different perspectives. And it's just not just women, but women who have intersectionality, women of color, women who are single mothers, women who have a lot of different experiences to bring to the table. But also we have to have the interaction and the discussions with the other members of the ecosystem, whether they're men, whether they represent other types of communities. There's diversity in age, in experiences, in education, in languages that you speak, in religion. So we want all of that wealth of perspectives represented in a team. Having said that, I do have to say that there are plenty of studies that show that having women in leadership, in the founding team, in the CXO team, has proven to increase performance. And in my case, in my fund in the US, I have to say anecdotally that some of our best performing companies do have a female co-founder in their teams. So it seems like the hypothesis, the theory is being validated by many of our experiences anecdotally, and also by the studies that have been published by many business schools. women in microfinance and in entrepreneurship in general have also been proven to be more resilient in times of crisis. So when we have something like the pandemic that closes an entire industry like restaurants or tourism, it's been shown that having women represented in the leadership positions of these companies and enterprises does create more adaptability, versatility, and flexibility in this company. So definitely as a policymaker, if I were in a position to decide where to put in my policy dollars, I would certainly pay a lot of attention and focus on supporting female entrepreneurs and women in business and technology.
Great. Thank you. You know how being a woman, I think we encompasses a huge range of roles, right? As a leader, as part of the community, as part of family, motherhood, sisterhood, right? But how do you think we can empower women without us having to choose which roles is more important than the others? Because we also know in a lot of organizations and in many countries, sometimes the role of women are, when we talk about maybe salaries, maybe when we talk about benefits, sometimes it is being reduced because of the gender. And I know we don't want to go too detailed on the gender discussion, but how do you think? Because you are a leader, you are an entrepreneur, you are an innovator, you're a scholar, you're everything, right? You have many roles, but how do you choose and how do you keep a balance in keeping that role, all those roles intact?
Yes, that's a great question because this is one of my main agendas when talking about diversity, which is to have environments that embrace the entire, multifaceted, the multi identities that we have in our lives into the workplace and in our parenting for parents, in our interactions with the rest of the world. I think traditionally women have been asked to leave all the other roles that we have at home, right? And then we come to work and we can't talk about our children, we can't talk about our pregnancies, we can't talk about the fact that we have to leave early sometimes to pick up our children, or that we need to deal with children being sick at home. With the pandemic, a lot of this burden was on the shoulders of women. And it is not something that we can just forget, the fact that we do have a very important caregiving role in many cases. We may argue that it's unfairly placed on the shoulders of women, that the burden should be more balanced with the other members of the family. But the reality is that most of us have more responsibilities than just what we do at work. And I believe that a truly inclusive environment at work is going to embrace all of those identities that women bring to the table. For example, I want to normalize the fact that sometimes we are juggling and we are multitasking, and that while having a meeting, we may be in our minds thinking about the lists of things that we need to do in our other roles, our caregivers or parents or mothers. When we are able to bring that up and that is embraced and welcomed, then better ideas and better connections can happen. There are companies where it is recognized that, for example, having gone through early childhood, motherhood, it increases your management capacity. We learn a lot of skills when we are faced with this very rapidly changing environment where there is a lot of emotional investment on the outcome of that job, in this case, the parenting job, to turn out well. And I have to say, as a manager and as a leader, I feel much better equipped to deal with different types of curveballs or crises, and also really having more empathy and compassion for my teammates in understanding, how to better leverage everybody's skill sets and attributes to create the best products and performance for my team. And that has been something that is not just from my professional experience, but it combines insights and perspectives that I've gained also as a parent and in negotiating with my children and on a daily basis. And I think the smartest managers and leaders and CEOs will understand that when you allow people to bring everything that they got, and some of us are musicians, play chess, or athletes. Some of us have struggles as well. But when we are accepted fully, in the composition with all of our permutations of identities, that's when real creativity comes, when there is psychological safety for us to be able to think freely by combining all of those experiences into creating solutions. So thank you for asking that question. I do believe that, when I was younger, I tried to be very compartmentalizing my lives, and I didn't want to talk about my personal lives. But now I try to make it a point to share, to the extent that is appropriate, some of the other facets of my day-to-day, because sometimes it's only when I do that the connections, the unusual connections between the different silos in my brain happen. And that's really where we're going to be creating the solutions for the really challenging problems that we're facing today, like climate change and fourth industrial revolution, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, great. Yes, I think I think we also as women, I think we are so. I think we are. I don't know. We. I think we have this ability just to be able to multitask. Although sometimes the difference or the separation from professional life or personal life can be blurred. But I think I agree with you. I think in fact combining those can actually be of benefit for us, can be something that create more empathy, like you said, towards one another. We can actually connect easier with another person, because I think we can tell stories, and I think that stories, I think, link us to another person in a more in a different level than when you just talk about work, right? I watched one of your speeches, and I remember that you were born and raised in different countries, right? How does that actually shape your perspective on women leadership and empowerment? I mean, did you learn that? Did you see that from being raised by your parents? Or I think you talk about your grandma in one of your talks. And how does culture? I know you are, you have all this assimilated cultures, right? How does culture play a big role in your personality, in your in shaping the society, if you may? And how can you think the role of cultures can actually be of the advantage being a woman?
Very good. Yeah, I was born in Korea, raised in Argentina, and I did all of my schooling in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And I have worked the last 2 decades in the U.S. So professionally, I'm mostly American because that's where I got all of my training and my work experience. But definitely, some of these influences coming from my Asian background, as well as having been raised in Argentina. I have more of a Latin American flair when it comes to my social life and how I like to spend my time. But I think that a notion of multicultural background has been very helpful in entrepreneurship, because what happened is that, when I was 6 years old, I went from a world that I thought it was fixed, like there was no challenging of the environmental institutions, the rules that I learned as normative values in my household and at school, to me, were absolute, right? There was no challenging of those societal rules. Now, when I moved to Argentina, many of them were not the same. And I was contrasting what I was learning at home and what I was being told at school or by my community, my friends. And that created a lot of disconnect. So, for example, clearly I remember one anecdote when I went to school and there was an exam and I saw somebody appear cheating on the exam. I went home and I shared this with my parents, and they said, Rebecca, this is your civic duty to go and report the cheating, because that is bad for the entire community of the school if people don't respect the rules. And so I was 6 or 7 years old. I went to school. I told the teachers, and very quickly I realized that doesn't fly in our Argentine culture. And so, so many of these experiences, when I would be told something at home, I would be told something at school. And that uncertainty and that discomfort of not having clear rules actually got translated into, wait a minute, this means that I can have critical thinking in deciding which of these norms, which of these values feels comfortable to me, right? So I could combine the different cultural traits to one mixed culture that made sense to me. And that means that also I learned to challenge the status quo, because whatever was absolute and the law, now I knew that it was relative. It depended on where you were and who you talked to. Sometimes a lot of those institutions, which could be in some cases, the products that we have or the solutions that we accept as givens, maybe they can be challenged. Maybe there's a new solution. Maybe there's a new perspective to this that the community or society doesn't know. And that really influences your entrepreneurial thinking, because entrepreneurs are about challenging, right? About saying, no, I don't accept the current solutions the way they are. I don't want to wait an hour for the taxi to come to pick me up to go to the airport. I want something where I can track Uber with an app real time and have that convenience. And so many of our solutions have happened because of people challenging inconveniences or inefficiencies. So that's on the culture side. In terms of women, it's tremendous. I have a very strong sense of genealogy and the strength of the women in my family. My grandmother, my mother were really the people who created the day-to-day constant and consistent work and effort and investment for all of the generations to do better, just a little bit better the next time, right? To be able to access education, better jobs, better environments, and the women have been the consistent force behind it. Right. And as I meet very successful founders, I can see the pattern of the influence of many generations of women who have withstood, a lot of sacrifice and a lot of sometimes pain to be able to enable others in their communities and families to pursue their dreams and to do better. So, and with the pandemic, we realized this too. The adaptation to virtual learning, to being at home, to lockdowns. So much of that was in the hands of women who were able to say, okay, we got this. We can deal with this, and we'll be the emotional foundations for our families. So I don't believe that there could be entrepreneurship without women in this, at work and at home, who are providing some of that strength and resilience that we wouldn't have if we didn't have that diversity.
Right. I watched one of your talks, and you were speaking in fluent Spanish, and I was just whoa. I think it was of course, I couldn't understand a word that you were saying. I don't speak Spanish, and they don't have any subtitles. But it's amazing. I think you were sort of engaging with the audience, and how you know it's very adaptable on how you can engage with the audience and how you can speak their language. In such interesting way. And also, we actually have a question from the audience. Okay, this is from the YouTube channel. Okay, learning from the Theranos case, Elizabeth Holmes. Do you think that she got that big because being a woman in Silicon Valley is very rare? Do you think that would pose a problem? Like, when Theranos got really big and got fundings from different ventures and sponsors from big names, mostly because she is a woman entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. What do you think about that?
I think it's the other way around. I think she became notorious once she got to a point of fame, before, of course, the very famous fallout. That it's just so rare for women to be able to make it to that level of leadership. Even today, if you look at, for example, the percentage of women in investing in venture capital firms, like the ones that I founded, we're really looking at maybe in the best day, 8% of investors are women. And if you look at CXOs, board members, we go between maybe 5%, maybe 15%, and depending on the vertical or sector and the size of the company. So we're still very much a minority when it comes to achieving, raising that kind of capital and raising to the levels of becoming CEOs of really large billion-dollar companies. And so once she achieved that status, then she got pressed because it was reporting something that is unusual, infrequent. But getting there, I'm sure, was really difficult.
Right.
I think now with a lot of these discussions on diversity, inclusion, and belonging, people may misconstrue the fact that because there are programs supporting women and minorities, that it's easier for us to access resources. But the stats don't show that. The stats show that we still are at a disadvantage, having exactly the same background, the same accomplishments, the same idea. Women face a lot more challenges in getting money, capital, and also climbing up the ladder at work. So sometimes when you do have, the rare cases of women who make it, then they get exposure and press, which is understandable. What's sad about the Theranos case, however, is that she quickly became the role model and somebody that a lot of women looked up to, because she represented that we can be the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, right? In terms of achieving the level of success and growth with our companies. But then because of the fallout, now I think it backfired on us to some extent, and that makes me quite sad.
And it was actually a really big, it was a really big case, and it was a really big issue that rose about Theranos, which is, you're right. It's yes, it's very rare to see a woman entrepreneur being that successful and in such a short time, and having a lot of attention from the world. And then, but at the same time, with the quick fallout, it just sort of, I think you're right. I think it creates that backfire towards a lot of women who maybe also striving to be successful entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. Okay, great. We have another question. Hi, Rebecca. Good morning. May I ask you a question on how to increase our confidence in the workplace when we are part of the minorities? Because not all company and organization are really, they don't really support diversity. Some of them just use it as formalities and end up we cannot grow our career because it's already being a culture in our society. I hope you can answer my question. Thank you. And that's a question from Felicia.
So the question is, because there's so many barriers to women right now at work, how do we deal with that? Is because I didn't hear the question part of the comment.
The question is how to increase our confidence in the workplace.
Okay.
Being part of the minorities.
Yes. That's a really, really complex question, because we have this thing named microaggressions. Sometimes it's not blatant harassment where we're told, I'm firing you because you're a woman and women are bad at this. That's sometimes easier to deal with because it's so blatant that you can go and file for a report, you can sue the company. There's recourses that really validate the fact that you feel grievance and upset about this. But sometimes these aggressions are very subtle. It just happens all the time. So, for example, when I was at MIT and I would go to parties, people would say, oh, you're here because, probably you're a woman and women have an easier time to get into MIT because, engineering has more applications from men. And that is actually not factual, but that was the assumption. And you hear this over and over and over. And after a couple of years, you wonder, am I here just because I'm a woman? Am I here just because I'm fulfilling some quota in somebody's list? Then you come to Silicon Valley, and I was CEO of this company, Unoodle, and I would go to networking events. People would ask me, what do you do at Unoodle? I would say CEO. And they would say, excuse me, sales? Did you say sales? And that would happen 10 times a day, right? So those microaggressions do have the effect of glaciers, which can absolutely change the entire landscape, right? They can go through stone and rock, and they can change the way you feel about yourself. And so building confidence when you're constantly told you don't belong is challenging. My best reaction to that, to those comments, or to that lack of confidence, is to have a support system of peers. One, role models, people that I admire, and I say, okay, we can do this. This is an example of that person, of a woman who's made it, and oh my goodness, she can do it all, right? And it's inspirational. But also a network of peers with whom we can get together and actually talk honestly with radical candor about some of these challenges that we face, and be able to support each other and validate each other. These verbal affirmations are really important. It's a love language. And so I created, for example, a little group called the Git Club, which was just maybe 15 women, 20 women. We would get together for breakfast once a month. Everybody kind of similar situations, other investors or CXOs. And we would spend 2 hours just really talking about everything that's happening in our lives, the successes that we have, and then we all celebrate it together for each other. But also the struggles. We could talk about difficulties with our co-founders, our investors, even in our marriages or our relationships, and really be able to support each other in having the shared experience of struggle, which is very bonding. And what happens in those meetings is that, we look at each other and say, wait a minute, I know this makes you feel like you're not good enough, but you are powerful, you are amazing, you are incredible, and we can all see this. And that is really reaffirming.
Right. Well, I think that's a very awesome group of people and support system that becoming, your cheerleaders, right? The people that can see you for who you are, see your potentials, and just sometimes just give that affirmation that, you're okay, you're doing okay, and, every once in a while we need that.
Yes. Being able to, rely on somebody else every now and then. That's why I call the club Git Club, because so many women are always giving at home, at work. We're caregivers. And I said, no, this club is to get something. I want to get something out of this, not give for once.
For once, you just want to get, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Speaking of role models, who, if I may ask, who do you consider as your role models?
Yeah, and people sometimes expect me to say the name of somebody really famous, an entrepreneur. But as I'm getting older, honestly, I'm getting more and more in awe of those silent females in my family. My mother, my grandmother. That now I, as a mother myself, can understand how difficult and challenging working and being a really loving parent can be. And I have tremendous admiration for women in those positions, especially women who, maybe single parents, for example, who don't have access to that support system. I don't know how they do it. It's just absolutely impressive, and they deserve all of our admiration and respect. From the business world, I think you can look at women like Megan Smith, who worked for the White House as the CTO, who are just incredible powerhouses with ideas that have supported diversity and STEM education all over the world. She was part of the team in a team called General Magic in the 90s that came out of Apple. It was a spin-off of Apple that invented the first version of the smartphone. And that team coined terms like cloud computing and emojis and apps, mobile apps. And she was part of that executive team. So we have women like Megan Smith who are just incredible inventors and innovators who have shaped the way we look at the world. Another person who had a lot of influence in my life is Susan Murgott, a professor at MIT who dedicated her life to creating solutions for communities who don't have access to safe water. And honestly, I think without her influence in my life, I may have ended up being a banker or a consultant. And by interacting with her passion and commitment to creating a better world, my entrepreneurial career was born, because my first job was as a social entrepreneur. So I owe many women the inspiration and also the toolkits that they were able to provide to me to be able to have a career in entrepreneurship and investing.
In our audience, we have Jennifer Lauren Anwar. Hi, Jennifer. She has a question for you, Rebecca, and I think she wants to ask you directly.
Hi, Rebecca. I'm Jennifer. It's raining now in Jakarta. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. So nice to see a face and a voice, not just chat messages. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you. My question is, can you give us advice on what is the major difference between startup in Indonesia and America? Have a great day. Thank you.
Yes. So I think where the world is going is that startups start to look a lot more similar globally. And I've seen this in Southeast Asia and Latin America, comparing with Silicon Valley and San Francisco. So overall, I think there's convergence, even in terms of valuations, the type of expertise that we have in the teams, the tools that we use to create our companies. There used to be more difference between resource-rich ecosystems like San Francisco as compared to, let's say, Buenos Aires. And now it's becoming a little bit closer in terms of the quality of the teams, the ideas, and the global mindset of the entrepreneurs. But we still have a few differences. And I will say, sitting at Silicon Valley, I teach at Stanford. So I see a lot of new generations in their early 20s. There is a different level of appreciation of the problems that we face as a market. So, in understanding opportunities, but also what I may call the entitlement of the new generations and knowing that they deserve funding, for example, versus maybe in other ecosystems like Indonesia, where there is I think, more humility of first-time entrepreneurs on acknowledging that, hey, we are starting, there's a lot for us to learn, we want coaching, and we appreciate the opportunity to tackle a certain problem. So I like working with entrepreneurs outside of San Francisco because I think that modesty and humility lends to better learning, as a founder from the market, better data processing, better network building, and you get more people to support you. I also think that there's so many more interesting problems all over the world. If you look at Southeast Asia, you look at South America, it's a blue ocean, right? There are solutions in fintech and health tech education that if you just make a product happen, you know that you'll have guaranteed consumers, because those are very much needed and desired products. There's no clutter of solutions out there in some of these verticals, and so it's a really fun game to create a company and grow exponentially because the market has been demanding these products for a long time. I have had the pleasure to meet a lot of Indonesian entrepreneurs, thanks to Ivan and GW, and then a lot of the other ecosystem building events that have happened in the region and the country. And I have to say, we as investors are really excited about Indonesia because there's good technical talent. There are a lot of really interesting problems to be solved. There's a really large market to be addressed. And if you look at some of the adaptations of, let's say a business model around fintech or payments, and you look at some of the solutions that are coming out of Indonesia, they're quite original, they're quite innovative, and they have the potential to also expand to the rest of the region. So I think overall, there's a lot of optimism and potential of Indonesian entrepreneurs to do extremely well in the region and the rest of the world.
Okay. You have your company, Rivet Ventures, that invests in companies where women-led, right? It is a women-led markets, and when I check your website, the portfolio are very diverse. Right, you have digital audio businesses, award-winning children multimedia company, to outdoor camping on a private-owned land. Okay, how do you and your team decided that this will be an impactful business? How would you decide? Because I'm sure you receive tons of proposals. But how do you choose?
Yeah, we see thousands of deals, and the question is early stage, because we go usually very early stage. How can you predict that a certain company is going to do well? We can't, but we have some patterns that we try to see in these companies, and it always starts with a team. The team has to have founder market fit, meaning whatever they know and understand, and their expertise, their experiences have to fit the problem that they want to solve. And so for me, it's really important to know that either you have a skill set that can be easily recycled into this new sector, or that you are incumbent on that sector, that you really understand the problem because of a personal close experience with the problem. Together with that, I think part of the initial strength of a company is going to be based on your ability to tell a story. Because the better you tell the story of the vision of the company, the better you can get capital, because you can pitch to investors, the better you can recruit people, A+ type people, to join your company and get inspired and excited about the problem and the product that you're building, right? And also, these stories are the ones that really fuel the culture and the value system of the company, which are, we discuss, so important for the performance of the company. So I want to see a team that is able to tell me that story of why this is a product or a solution that the world needs, and why are you going to grow to be really, really large. A couple of the companies that we have in our portfolio in Rivet that have reached unicorn status are Modern Treasury and Honeybook. And they're both in businesses that enable small businesses. Honeybook, for example, is a platform that allows gig workers and small businesses to handle all of the transactions, contracting, etc. And it's such an important tool for business owners and entrepreneurs to be able to create employment and support their families.
Yeah.
And when you see solutions that really matter for the livelihoods of people, those tend to do really well, right?
Right.
I'm sometimes more skeptical of solutions that are about fashion statements, like maybe they're fun for a few months, but then they're not truly solving a pain point that is essential. And so I like to see solutions that are kind of unsexy. They're not the flashy ones that everybody's going to be talking about because they're consumer products, but that are truly solving a problem faced by somebody in the economy that is influencing the economic engine of the market. And those tend to be really good bets that grow because they're helping people with real problems.
Great. Thank you. We also have another question from the audience, from Ari, and I think he wants to ask you directly. Ari Bastian, you can I?
Yes. Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you. I was just curious about how could you manage your time? I mean, as a woman, you are working on your business, and then also you are taking care of your family. I mean, can you give us some tips and tricks? Because after marriage, family will can be more demanding. So
Yes.
you have like less time for your business, but how can you be so perfect on both sides? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I am always tired, like all of you. There's things that I do. I think, first of all, I think this I only realized in my 40s. I'm 41 years old, and I learned to be very kind to myself. Sometimes certain things don't get done, and that's okay. Other days when I feel like my house is a mess, or I'll tell you a story. Yesterday, I forgot to order lunch for my son, who's in first grade. And he came home and said, I, I didn't have food today at school. And maybe 5 years ago, I would have beaten myself all day. I would have felt really bad about it. But yesterday, I just talked to him and I said, oh, that's good that I gave you some extra snacks. So, and now you're hungry, you'll have a better dinner. And we laughed about it. And, being kind to myself and understanding that I'm human and I can make mistakes. Sometimes I forget things. I think it's really important for my emotional well-being. And when I'm mentally healthy, right, and I have self-loving, that translates into higher productivity and better managerial skills. And I tend to have better ideas when I feel better about myself. And so self-acceptance, self-love, giving yourself a break, super important. And it sounds like a very commonsensical thing to do, but I was very hard on myself for a long time before I realized that it starts with me. It starts with me giving myself a break, right? I also do a lot of multitasking to be able to stay healthy. So, for example, a lot of my meetings, especially phone calls and Zoom calls, I do while I'm walking or running or exercising. And I make it a point to schedule things so that, I do have those opportunities to also perform some self-care. Being healthy and feeling good about your body matters a lot when it comes to performance and being on top of your game. But also, I do a lot of multitasking. I have cooked meals and baked bread while having sometimes meetings. And, I'm honest about it. I say I'm right now getting, dinner ready for the kids. Is it okay if we talk while I'm cooking? I'll mute myself so that the noise doesn't bother you. But, I'll make that part of me. Something that I don't apologize for. I want to normalize the fact that I do have these obligations and that if you want to work with me, it's part of the deal.
Right.
Including the flexibility, including the fact that sometimes I need to do remote work. All of these things are established as well. It's part of dealing with me. And then the last thing that I do, and again, this is a skill that I gained maybe more recently, is to really have amazing delegation skills with really, really, really top talent. So in all of my affiliations, in my teaching job, in my funds, I have right hands, who are brilliant, and I trust them 100%. So basically, I trust that once we have a discussion about what needs to get it done, I don't have to micromanage at all. I just almost forget about it. And being able to have that level of trust with your team has been tremendous. And I'll tell you the story. Like last year, I taught a class at Stanford where I decided for the first time I'm going to have a head TA, teaching assistant, and I gave him so much more responsibility that I have done in the past. Almost, I removed myself from half of the tasks that I did the previous year. And guess what? I got the best ratings for this class that I've ever had in 10 years of teaching at Stanford. The median of the scores for the class was 5 out of 5. And so, I just have to get out of the way. That's the best leadership possible.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's a very amazing and insightful advice about leadership that I've heard so far. The ability to delegate, right, and not micromanage. I think that's really, really important. One last questions that we have is, what keep you interested, Rebecca? You're at a point where you've sort of seen everything, right? But what still, give you that butterfly in your stomach? What still keeps you interested?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. I hear sometimes the same idea over and over and over because we know that ideas are cheap. A lot of people recognize the same problems, have the same solutions. So it's not usually the ideas that make me feel excited. Although every now and then I do hear something that is really disruptive, really potentially vertical changing, and that's obviously stimulating for my brain. At this point, what makes me feel the most butterflies is really these human connections. I have decided and committed to myself that I will not work with people who don't share the same values, integrity, and principles as I do. This desire to change the world for the better, to have civic responsibility, to create social justice. I need to be with people who will see eye to eye in these goals in life, because when I didn't make that a priority, it was miserable. It was not productive nor pleasurable, joyful to work in those environments. So that's, people make me excited, and especially young people. When I teach, I see these dreams and insatiable curiosity and the sense of wonder about all the possibilities. And that brings me back to when I was 20 and I thought I could, change the world. And I don't want to ever lose that sense of wonder, curiosity, possibility. And so that's why I think I'm, involved in events like this, and I continue my teaching because it just fuels my my desire to wake up in the morning and try my best at contributing to a better world.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing, especially at 5 a.m. at your time. I think you provided so much of insightful answers. Comes from your personal and your professional experience, and we're just so honored to have you with us tonight in Indonesia. I guess because of time constraint, we will have to end the session. But me personally, I'd like to thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to talk to you. Thank you to Ad America, to Jen Indonesia, and for all the questions from the audience. I think you guys asked such an amazing question, so thank you so much. and make it, make this talk show really, really interesting. I'm going to give the floor back to James. And again, thank you so much, Rebecca, for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speaker, Bu Rebecca, along with our moderator, Bu Ayu, for today's very informative session. There were a lot of great tips for all our audience members sitting at home. Now, for those of you at home, you may be wondering, how could I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? It's very easy. All you need to do is go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, select Create a Program, and click Collaborate with us. All event proposals coming to us will be reviewed, and your event might be featured here soon. You can also subscribe to our newsletter for all our weekly updates. That's it, everyone. That wraps this episode. It's been fun, but we have to say goodbye for now. Follow our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at @ATAmerica for all our fun contents, event updates, and so much more. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. My name is James, and we'll see you at the next At America TV episode. Goodbye.